This week we're starting a new sermon series, okay? And it's called Doubt It. And we're talking about doubts that we have with faith. Okay, and so you might be thinking, why are we talking about this information? If most of us believe in a God, so why are we talking about this? Number one reason is because there's times in our faith where we have doubts. I remember growing up in the church, I believed everything until I got to my teen years, and then I didn't believe anything. Like anything my parents said, I didn't believe, right? I questioned everything. And so I had doubts. So what do we do with our doubts, right? Okay, we're going to talk about that. A second reason is as we're raising our kids. And third, what about conversations that we have with people who don't believe in God? That's what this is all about. And so we're training ourselves, we're learning the material so that we can interact with a world that doesn't worship God. And listen to what 1 Peter 3:15 says. It says, always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. Always be prepared to have an answer. It's like, hey, do you believe the Bible? Yeah. Why? Ooh, okay. Stump me. We got to be ready. Genesis is the first book of the Bible. You open the Bible, Genesis, okay? It was written about 1400 BC, okay, about 3,400 years ago. Okay, you remember the back of the good old days? Remember that? So, written by Moses, and here's how it starts. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, right? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. And then God said, let there be light, and there was light. Doubts are real. And if you don't have any doubts in life, that might be a scary spot to be because you might just have blind faith. And blind faith is not smart, right? We don't just walk through life with the blindfold on. We use what God's given us to understand the world. And at times, doubt can creep in. But it's in those times that we need to do the research, right? And develop a reasoned, educated perspective, right? There's two main worldviews. Number one, there is a God. Or two, there's not a God. There's either God or not a God. And two of the largest explanations of our world today is number one, Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created, or number two, in the beginning there was an explosion. So we're going to do like a little history lesson in science and how science has evolved over the years. And this is important backstory on the study of the origin of the universe. For hundreds, if not thousands of years, the study of science led the world to believe that the universe always existed. So the vast majority of scientists believe universe always existed, which that would be contrary to Genesis chapter 1:1. So science and the Bible are in conflict. But in 1922, Russian mathematician Alexander Friedman discovered an error Albert Einstein, the great physicist, made on his theory of general relativity. Einstein could not get the math to work out. And at the time, he had that personal conviction that the universe always existed. And so as he was studying time and space, holding to the belief that the universe always existed, his theory had problems. So what he did is he instituted what is called the cosmological constant. And Friedman, in 1922, he pointed out this error that Einstein made. And what Einstein did in his general theory of relativity, you know what he did? To make the math work out, he divided by 0. Okay? So why does Einstein do that? Because his view of the world shaped the decision, and the math didn't fit it. So he added something in. What was happening was science was leading to the discovery that the universe did not always exist, that it was actually expanding. And in 1929, Hubble invited Einstein to the Mount Wilson Observatory in California to take a look for himself. What Einstein saw was irrefutable. The universe indeed was expanding. And his theory of general relativity, just what his theory discovered as well, right? Einstein went on to admit that it was one of the biggest mistakes of his life and led him to search for a God who was responsible for this creation. And after observing the red shift, Hubble discovered that the universe seemed to be expanding from a single point. From a single point. To blow your mind, the scientific majority believes that the universe isn't expanding into open space, that there was a point where there was no space. And from one fixed point, the universe is emerging and continues to this day. That means that the universe is continuing to be created to this day. Wow. Crazy. So here is where the scientific community created the Big Bang Theory. There was nothing, no time and space and matter, and then everything exploded into existence from a single point, and now we have everything that we see today. There's more evidence for this. 1965, Penzias and Wilson discovered a peculiar radiation from their antennas at the Bell Labs in New Jersey. Everywhere they turned their antenna, they found radiation. The radiation afterglow, it was called. Evidence of a Big Bang where radiation was left over from this event. Another piece of evidence, according to the second law of thermodynamics, is that the universe is running out of energy. That if the universe was eternal, it would be out of energy by now. But instead, there was a beginning. And ever since that point, the energy level in the universe is decreasing. The late Stephen Hawking, he's one of the most famous atheists in the world. He said this. He said, almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. The universe had a beginning. This is huge. It's huge. Because this is the common ground where the scientific community and those who uphold the Bible are in the same place. That in the beginning, that there was a beginning. And life exploded from this point. Now, one valuable resource that we have as humans is rationality, is the ability to think and reason, right? Take in evidence and develop a conclusion, solve complex problems. So let's put our thinking caps on and work through this. Okay? Since the universe had a beginning, there's two options, Frank Turek says. Either nothing and no one created something out of nothing, or someone created something out of nothing. Those are the options. Well, imagine everything came from nothing. Have you ever seen nothing? What does it look like? Right? Right now I love science. Right? Now imagine you want to prove the creation of the universe, so you're going to get in a lab and put on a lab coat. And what you need to do first is start with nothing. Okay? Imagine starting with nothing. Okay, we got to get rid of everything, including the scientist and the test tube and all the chemicals in the air, and we need nothing. And out of nothing, we're going to create everything. How do we do that? How to create anything with nothing? And what we find out, that's impossible. It's impossible. And actually what happens is we find ourselves at an end of the road with science. That science can't do that. Let me say it this way. Both explanations of how the universe came to be are miracles. So you either have a miracle from a miracle worker or a miracle without a miracle worker. Which one takes more faith to believe? The evidence for evolution, more accurately described as naturalism, that the world came to be through natural processes, is today our best explanation of creation apart from a God. So what our world is trying to do is remove a God and try and explain everything, and it falls incredibly short. And really what we have is a philosophical belief, not a scientific belief. We're philosophically choosing that there is not a God, and then trying to fill in the gap with science. We got to understand that no matter what side of this we're on, it starts with a philosophical belief. Either a miracle from a miracle worker or a miracle without a miracle worker. And as we look at evolution, what's the evidence for it? Well, one of the number one evidence for evolution that we're told is the fossil record. And so if we're going to see if evolution is true, what we need to see in the fossil record is transition from simple to complex. Okay, here's dinosaur bones, right? And it's like, okay, this animal was originally this so many million years ago, and then it evolved into this one, and today it's a gray whale. And that's evidence. But here's the problem. If evolution is true, we don't need one in the middle. We need billions and billions and billions of transitions. Because in this diagram, these could be individual species, but if they need a transition, we need billions of transitions. Listen to what Charles Darwin wrote in his book, Origin of Species. He said this: "Why then is not every geological formation and every stratum full of such intermediate links? Geology assuredly does not reveal any such finely graduated organic chain." And this is perhaps the obvious and gravest objection which can be argued against my theory. He knew it was a problem. He looked at the evidence. He saw a problem. And he hoped one day, through more archaeology, they would find more evidence for his theory. So 100 plus years later, where are we at? Listen to what scientists say. G.G. Simpson, American paleontologist, PhD from Yale University, professor at Columbia University and the University of Arizona, says this. He says, "The regular absence of transitional forms is not confined to mammals, but is almost universal phenomenon, as long been noted by paleontologists." A.J. Marshall says, "The origin of birds is largely a matter of deduction. There is no fossil in the stages through which the remarkable change from reptile to bird is achieved." H. Smith at NYU writes this: "The gap remains unbridged, and at best, the best place to start for evolution of vertebrates is in the imagination." Niels Hebert Nielsen, from Lund University. So the fossil material is now so complete that it's been possible to construct new classes, and the lack of transitional series cannot be explained as be due to the scarcity of material. The deficiencies are real. They will never be filled. And Stephen Gould, Harvard paleontologist, leader in evolutionary biology, says this: animals in the fossil record appear fully formed and die with no change. So why do they say the fossil record is evidence for evolution? If evolution is true, we should see that. But when we look, it's not there. But you know what? You hear nothing about this. Nothing about this. Because it's evidence against. And so they don't put it out there. They don't say this stuff in our textbooks. Here's another huge problem with the fossil record. It's called the Cambrian explosion. In the Cambrian time period, in one geological column, nearly all living phyla are found, okay? Kingdom, phyla, class, order, family, genus, species. The phyla, nearly all the phyla are found in the Cambrian period, and they appear suddenly, moving from nothing to everything overnight, geologically speaking. So in the Cambrian period, we have the 70 original phyla found, and since that time, the phyla have been reduced to 30 through extinction. Since that time, no new phyla have evolved. And you know what scientists say that period of time was? 500 million years. So in 500 million years, you have no new phyla. But they don't teach that in science class. Only one side is being taught. Listen to how National Geographic says it. The Cambrian explosion is the most intense burst of evolution ever. There's a huge problem with this. Is that evolution needs to be slow and gradual. There can't be explosions of life. Ariel Roth, PhD in zoology, in his book titled Origins, writes this: we have virtually no evidence in the fossil record or elsewhere for any of the changes proposed during this immensity of time, but the public hears nothing of this problem. Why is that? Now, if we continue to use our rationality, let me show you this next picture. Periodic table of elements, right? Okay? Thinking, if we're an evolutionist, how did that come to be? How did those evolve? Where did they come from? They have to come into existence somehow. How do we get all that? Let's go to the next picture. Okay, a food chain, right? That it's all interconnected, and what we were taught as kids is that if you take one of those animals out, that the whole thing can fall apart, right? The whole thing can collapse. If we remove one animal, one goes extinct, it all falls apart, right? Explain that through an evolutionary perspective. That they all evolved to this new stasis that we have and we can't change it? That doesn't make sense. Go to the next one. Explain that. What kind of natural process creates that? Next one. That. Charles Darwin said, the eye on a peacock's feather makes him sick. Makes him sick. You know why? Because it doesn't line up with his theory. It looks like someone painted it. It looks unreal. It's amazing. Go to the next one. A lionfish. So much. We look at creation and we're just in awe and wonder at what we see. If evolution were true, all we'd see is globs, messes. That's not what we see. You know, Richard Dawkins explains it this way. Evolution is like a tornado going through a junkyard, creating a 747, a Boeing 747. Do you believe that? That doesn't happen, right? I mean, I haven't made some explosions in my day and I haven't created anything good, right? Why does our world choose evolution? Why do we choose evolution? It's because if there's a God, we have to answer to him. If there's a God, he makes the rules. If there's a God, he is king and we are not.